What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven, and in this video we are going to take a look at a Peter Pants unit tier list. I thought this was a really cool idea when Koga305 posted it on the official Storybook Brawl Discord. Koga is also going to be doing some really similar content today on the Book of Heroes podcast. You can find that on any major podcast platforms, or I'll leave links down in the comments below. Since I'm such a big fan of Peter Pants, I wanted to give my own take on the tier list. Thought it was a really cool idea. If there's other cool tier lists that you guys want to see, maybe Tier List Tuesday or something, we could start up. If you guys have any fun ideas that you'd like to see, just leave them down in the comments below, and bonus points if you also link me to the tier list maker for any tier lists that you want to see me do. And maybe we can make that kind of a regular feature of the channel. I'm also going to throw a game on the side, the other corner here. That way the people that aren't as interested in tier lists will still get a game out of this video. But let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this video, and we are going to be just going through all of the units alphabetically and ranking them on this tier list. S, A, B, C, D, F. And I think the way that I am going to break up this tier list is basically S, A, and B units are going to be 3-cost units, and anything below that is going to be a 2-cost unit. And that's typically how I play Peter Pants. I think that if you can purchase a 3-cost unit over a 2-cost one, then you should. The only reason to purchase a 2-cost unit is it's the early game and you want to make use of your gold efficiently. Otherwise, you should just be always spending your gold on tier 3 units, trying to grab tier 3 treasures to try to find that hat and that ball. And first things first, we are going to be placing the goat, and we'll put the goat in C. It is, especially like on that first turn, a pretty reasonable unit for the stats that you get out of it. It's also an evil unit, which I really like, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we progress through this video. Might also shift around some things. So we'll see where everything kind of lines up in the end. I'm just kind of going through this blind. I don't know where I'm going to place everything necessarily, but I think as a general rule, C, D, and F are going to be those tier 2 units. And obviously we're going to break that rule, well, I think just once actually, but we'll see how everything shakes up in the end. And honestly, the next unit isn't that much worse than the goat. And both of these, again, you're really just trying to grab these things on turn 1 and potentially on turn 5 if you need to pick up like a 2-cost unit alongside a 3-cost unit. But otherwise, you want to try to avoid these. Baby Root, I'm actually going to throw down an F, I believe. Something's got to go in F tier, and I think Baby Root is going to be the first thing to get there, unfortunately. Black Cat, though, is going to make it up to C. The reason for that is a lot of times you wind up playing evil stuff, and Black Cat can actually serve a pretty reasonable support role in some of those evil comps, enough that Black Cat might be one of the best tier 2 units. I think for right now, I'm going to put it right here. I'm trying to think if it's turn 1. You know what? Yeah, if I'm being honest, Black Cat is going to give you a lot more win equity in those mid-game fights, early and mid-game fights, that it's better to just have it over the 2-3 stacks of the Bad Billy Goat. So I do think Black Cat is pretty good, and here's where I'm going to start by breaking my own rule, and that is with Blind Mouse. I think the Blind Mouse is basically something that you should always be trying to pick up. Obviously, you won't always be able to, but I think whenever you can, you should. If you manage to find a forking rod by tripling some 3 blind mice, that is what's going to take your Peter Pants and turn it into Super Peter Pants. And there's not too many ways to get tier 4 treasures, and the easiest way to do that is by tripling some blind mouse. So definitely want to pick up all of the blind mice that you see. Some people, your mileage may vary on whether or not you want to take it early, though I do think that there's some other sweet treasures that you can get on blind mice early that push you in some interesting directions. Like, you could potentially get a Sky Castle. I haven't even personally tried that one out yet. Sky Castle Peter Pants could be pretty interesting. Coin of Sharon obviously would be really strong early. You can grab, you know, there's a bunch of tier 4 treasures that are pretty good. Another reason to pick up some blind mice is sometimes on Peter Pants you will grab a treasure map, and blind mice can really make use of that, allowing you to then grab a tier 6 treasure. Tier 5 treasures on Peter Pants generally aren't the best, but there are some really good 6 treasures that can win the game, especially if you get them early. Embiggening Stone is obviously really fabulous. Owls can be really good, especially if you get it early on. And then Pandora's Box being one of the only realistic ways to grab a tier 7 treasure on Peter Pants can also be found from the blind mice. So that's always something to consider as well, because otherwise treasure map isn't really a reasonable pickup on Peter Pants, but it can be if you already have 2 blind mice and you're just waiting to pick up that third one. Our next unit is the first 3-cost unit that we're going to be discussing, and it's actually the best one, and that is going to be Brave Princess. Now, there is a caveat here in that really you need to be purchasing Brave Princess in one of the first 5 turns of the game. You can maybe get away with turn 6, but after that, its value really starts to fall off. And Brave Princess is obviously really good if your main goal is just to assemble Hat Ball, but it will just get harder to slay with it as the game goes on. You won't really have access to Grimsoul, you won't really have access to any ways to grow its attack either, though sometimes you can make some interesting things work with it, like Eye of Ares, Sting, that other treasure that gives +3/+3 to slay units. So there are some ways to increase the power of questing Familiar, or Brave Princess rather, later into the game, though you'd much rather be picking it up early and just grabbing a Hat Ball with it. So those cases are a little bit more corner cases, but definitely some of the most powerful games that you can have on Peter Pants are going to involve an early Brave Princess, because that is one of the quickest ways to pick up a tier 3 treasure. The next unit that we're going to take a look at is Cinderella, and Cinderella is, I think, a little bit of a trap on Peter Pants. There is definitely a tendency to go, okay, we're playing Peter Pants, we're playing Hat Ball, we are going to be casting a bunch of spells, let's grab Cinderella. However, the econ on Peter Pants winds up being so tight because you need to purchase as many tier 3 units as you possibly can that you really can't afford to play or spend any gold on spells. Also, even if you could, a tier 2 treasure isn't typically anything super exciting. There's very few tier 2 treasures that I actually want to see when I'm playing Peter Pants. Probably the biggest one would be Locked Chest. Runestones is fine, but kind of weird. Maybe you'd take like Spinning Gold. There are definitely some times where you can make some tier 2 treasures work, but honestly, for the most part, I'd rather just avoid it. The best use of Cindy is once you already have Hat Ball assembled, you just pick it up and you cast a bunch of spells in that turn. You skip the treasure, you sell the Cindy, you've made a profit of 1 gold. And that is not really a huge thing to get super excited about. The best thing that I will say about purchasing an early Cinderella is that you remove it from the pool and that you are then not going to see it again in the future. So really think that you should avoid Cinderella basically at all costs. And honestly, I'm almost considering moving Baby Dragon down once I'm considering where some of these other units are going to shake out, but we'll see. I think that Cinderella, I just have to place an F tier because of how much other people might overvalue it, and I think that it is really just a trap that you don't want anything to do with. On to our next tier 2 unit, we've got Crafty, and you do definitely wind up making treasures on Peter Pants, so it's not the craziest thing to pick up a Crafty, but honestly, I think that it's gonna be pretty terrible for the most part most of the time. Maybe it slides into F tier. It probably does slide into F tier. I'm trying to think, maybe we will retool some of this other tier 2 stuff, because I'm trying to have them all be ranked as well. And trying to think, is that like in the middle of the pack of other tier 2 units? Maybe we'll come back to it, but again, tier 2 units, nothing super exciting. Speaking of not exciting, next up we've got Creeper, and Creeper is cute because it's one of the few ways that you can actually scale units on Peter Pants, which is important because you can only purchase tier 3 units. However, I don't think Creeper is it, and I actually think if any unit is a tier 3 mold breaker, it's Creeper. And yeah, I mean, I'm more likely to purchase a Black Cat than a Darkwood Creeper. It is just seldom going to be useful and fit into your comp. It's just going to have worse stats than both of these units, and to spend a whole bunch of gold to triple it, I think is really asking for a lot. So I'm going to put Darkwood Creeper, I think, actually into C tier because it is just really not super great. Next, we're going to look at Doubly. That is going to be solidly in B tier. It's okay. And typically you really don't want to be playing dwarves if you can avoid it. There are some times that you will take Doubly with like Embiggening Stone or Owls or some other like really niche scenarios that I brought up earlier, but for the most part you don't want to be spending all of the gold to try to make Doubly work. It's just so hard to scale and do anything fun with. We do have Fanny up next, and I think Fanny is the best of the dwarves. I think it probably goes over Baby Dragon, but typically dwarves, well, so I guess I feel like with all of these dwarves coming up, we've had 3 dwarves almost in a row now, right? Yeah, other than the Creeper intermission. I feel like I have to bring up Princess White. And Princess White is really the only reason I would say to ever purchase dwarves other than Crafty on Peter Pants. And that's because if you can purchase 7 dwarves, you will be able to get a tier 3 treasure for free, which is nice. It's nothing crazy, but I'm basically only purchasing Doubly if I already have Princess White. And one interesting thing about Peter Pants is every 3 turns you level up, everything in your shop gets +1/+1, Doubly gets +2/+2. So if you were tempted into purchasing Doubly, that's another reason to stay away. The longer you wait to purchase the Doubly, the better it is going to get. And typically I am only going into Princess White if none of my other treasures have paid out. I already have a pretty sizable board, and then I can pick up a Princess White, try to pick up some dwarves, and try to scale that out. Sometimes I will pick up Princess White earlier just because she is an evil character, and I'll try to grab a tier 3 treasure off of that, but even then I'm still not trying to rush it. And the reason that I am also bringing up Princess White right now is some people might get Princess White and then they start purchasing all of the Fannies, Crafties, and Tinies that they see. I definitely think that this is a mistake and that you want to steer clear of any dwarves that aren't Doubly and Crafty. At least have that be 6 of your purchases. When you have Princess White, you can purchase 3 Doublies, get a treasure, purchase 3 Crafties, get a treasure. Now White says you only need to purchase 1 more dwarf, so I'll let you buy 1 Fanny, but that's it. Don't go dwarf crazy. Don't buy a bunch of Fannies and a bunch of Crafties, because at that point you are then spending, let's say you purchase almost entirely tier 2 dwarves, and let's say you buy one Crafty, one doubly, and then you purchase 5 of these other dwarfs. You've now spent 10 gold on a and the other ones you're not completing either, the one doubly, the one Crafty. So really you've spent 16 gold plus Princess White, 19 gold. You spent almost double the gold and you've only received 1 treasure. So the only way to really make White worth the gold that you spend into it is to use that gold to purchase Crafties and doublies, so that way you can have additional shots at tier 3 treasures and try to find that apple. So I'm going to put Princess White at the beginning of the B tier for now. I think that sometimes that she does have some use, but you do have to be careful with it. Sometimes you can get lucky, and we'll go into that a little bit when we talk about Lucky. I think I might have been calling Lucky Crafty, but maybe, you know what, maybe I will talk about Lucky for right now. Lucky's very good. Lucky is one of the best units, again, that you can purchase early, and we're going to see another S tier unit that is Prized Pig. Both of these, again, same thing with Brave Princess. If you can pick these up in the first 5 turns of the game, for Lucky and Prized Pig, they might even be better than Brave Princess if you can purchase them on turn 1, because the econ that they give is absolutely insane. However, every turn after that, let's say every 2 turns, shift both of these down a tier, and really, they are going to fall off pretty significantly. Prized Pig, I'm even tempted to already move down to A tier, because pretty quickly you'll find that you want it out of your comp. You're not really going to have the possibility to triple it. That's probably going to be a waste of gold, and you're really just using it for a little bit of extra gold in the early game. Then you want to get rid of it, start playing some stronger stuff, and start trying to triple some stronger stuff. But it definitely can work, especially if there's no like Wonder Waddle, Pied Piper in the lobby. You're the only animal player looking for Prized Pigs. That can definitely be good. Lucky, though, I will definitely try to play as long as I possibly can in my comps. You'll often see me, it might even be in this video, I can't remember, there'll be like a Lucky in slot 4 that is just hanging out there trying to give me some some potential econ and some additional gold for purchasing some other good units. Obviously, though, if you already have a Princess White, then Lucky's going to be a really good pickup. I do think for Prize Pig's strength in the early game, it probably deserves an S tier slot, but just be mindful of the fact that obviously it's going to really fall off as the game progresses, and you might not be tripling both of these units. You might just be using them for early game econ, but they can be pretty good early game econ. Golden Chicken, this one might be a little bit surprising, but Golden Chicken I think I'm also going to place in A tier, and the reason for that is on turn 1, if I had the option to purchase any unit, it's probably Golden Chicken when I only have 2 gold. Now, ideally, I would purchase a Forbidden Fruit and then a Brave Princess, but aside from that, or maybe a Forbidden Fruit and then a Prized Pig, that would also be pretty good. Aside from both of those things, though, Golden Chicken is really good because it just defers your gold to the next turn. I'm not trying to triple Golden Chickens. Sometimes it happens, but basically you pick up a Golden Chicken just to make better use of your gold, because if you purchase any of these other units, you purchase a goat, then you resell the goat, you've now lost 1 gold. And it's much, much better to just try to spend every single point of gold that you have. There's a reason Lucky and Prized Pig are at the top. Econ really matters when you are playing Peter Pants, and Golden Chicken is going to help with that econ. Now we're going to look at Good Witch, and this is basically, other than Brave Princess, one of the first good units that we are looking at. And as far as I'm concerned, when you're playing Peter Pants, good is bad. I really, really don't want to be trying to triple good units if I can avoid it. And I think now is a great time to talk about why. You'll see in the game on the side of the screen here, the other corner, I'm probably picking up a bunch of evil units at the time. And the reason for that is, one, that Queen of Hearts is so strong. And we'll get to Queen of Hearts in a moment, but Queen of Hearts really allows you to carry a bunch of your early fights, and you'll also see that some of the other evil units have some built-in scaling. That's really important too. And then the other thing is that Ancient Sarcophagus and a few of the other mid to lower tier 3 treasures work out really well with evil comps, but the main one of those is going to be Ancient Sarcophagus, then potentially something like Sting or Bad Moon. Some other things can be really interesting with evil comps, but mostly it's just Ancient Sarcophagus, and allowing Ancient Sarcophagus to be strong for you in the in those instances where you don't find the hat ball is going to just make you overall a lot more powerful. So because of that, I like to avoid good units wherever I can. You'll see a lot of them, like Romeo doesn't really do anything. Donkey and Stag, sure, they're strong, but they don't scale. So for that reason, I'm gonna wind up placing most of the good units that you can possibly purchase in this B tier, and we'll see if any even can make it lower. I don't think any will make it below B tier. I think that Creeper is the worst, just because Creeper is so terrible. But if I'm being honest, I am more likely to play a Creeper sometimes than I am to play some of these good units. Now, in the early game, sometimes you just wind up playing whatever you have, and one of the good things about good units is that you can cast Shard of the Ice Queen on them. That's going to take any good unit, transform it into a random evil unit. And that can be really helpful because sometimes in the early game you just have to pick up a good unit, but you can make it into an evil unit pretty easily after the fact. So that is a avenue to consider. But you're going to see a lot of my B tier and a lot of my F tier are good units for that reason. Next up is another good unit, and that is going to be Happy Little Tree. And Happy Little Tree, I think, is also generally pretty bad. However, there is a small upside in both Happy Little Tree and in Darkwood Creeper, in that they are trees, so you can cast Flourish on them when you are hatballing. So that is something to consider, and a reason to potentially have one Happy Little Tree in like the very late game. But anything really before that, you're really not going to want it. And this is like something that's even less inconsequential than Cinderella. And I think it's just so much less likely to make your comps, even less likely than like a Baby Root. Baby Root can still be good supporting something like Vampire. Happy Little Tree is just gonna gunk up everything. We will look at one good tier 2 unit that I think is actually good, and I'm just giving some credit where credit is due to Humpty Dumpty, because I think that Humpty Dumpty, you know what, I am going to put it in C tier still if we can get this black cat to move over. I don't think I'm purchasing it over any tier 3 unit, but basically just on that first turn of the game, if I need to purchase a 2-cost unit, I think I'm pretty happy to pick up Humpty Dumpty just for the early game power that it provides. I'd probably pick it up over Black Cat and then shard it 3 turns later and be very happy when it turns into Black Cat or the goat. But for the very early game, I think that Humpty Dumpty is really good. Maybe you'll get it cracked against your opponent's Humpty Dumpty, but maybe it'll just allow you to kind of crush the lobby. And winning early as Peter Pants is also kind of sweet because you get to deal an extra point of damage if you win one of those combats in the first few turns. Black Cat, or sorry, Kitty Cutpurse is one that I am really not excited to take. Maybe I will put it over Crafty. Yeah, I think that I would. But I think it's probably behind Baby Dragon, and honestly, now that I'm looking at Fanny, Fanny probably does have to dip down here too, because I'm just not super excited to grab Fanny on the first turn. But Black Cat can provide you some econ, which can be nice. Generally, you're going to want to try to support it with like a Wicked Witch or something like that, but it can be fine as the first unit of the game that you pick up. I'd much rather pick up any of these ones or Minotaur though. Minotaur, if I've got Goat and Minotaur in the shop, I think I grab Minotaur. Minotaur is pretty interesting because it's also going to help you just with some of your other, like, it's going to help your ranged evil units just having an additional attack. It's also going to help your Vampire potentially slay, and I think I might take Minotaur over Black Cat. It's tricky because if these two combat against each other, the Black Cat will defeat the Minotaur, but Minotaur beats almost anything else in that early combat, including like Frog Prince, so I think that that's pretty good. And now we are going to take a look at Frog Prince, and this is a tricky one because I think that on most heroes, if you're somebody watching this video, you might actually undervalue Frog Prince. Frog Prince is really good, and it's a unit that a lot of like high-level players will pick up because they know they're going to pick up a princess pretty soon after that. They're going to try to pick up a Cindy or a Sherwood Sureshot or some other nice stuff. But one of the interesting things with Peter Pants, as you've already heard me say, I don't really like the princesses. Now, if you somehow know, like say your opening shop has both Princess White and Frog Prince, or an even better example would be Brave Princess plus Lonely Prince, then sure, yes, you can pick the Lonely Prince up. But other than Brave Princess, there's not really many other princesses that you want to pick up as Peter Pants. And for that reason, I think that a lot of times it's just going to be a pretty mediocre 1/1. And if for some reason Lonely Prince like then baits you into buying Princess Peep or Ogre Princess, well then you've just wasted 5 gold. Because it's not going to do anything, and now you've just wasted gold picking up a unit that you might not triple or you might not really care about in the long run. So I think for that reason I have to rate Lonely Prince pretty low. I'd much rather, I'd probably pick up Cindy. I'd pick up Lonely Prince over Baby Root like in the opening shop, but on turn 4, where you have 5 gold, I'm much more likely to pick up a Baby Root on that turn to like support a Vampire, like I said. So yeah, where does Lonely Prince have to go? Probably, I don't know, it seems pretty bad. I don't really ever want to use it, so I think I am going to put the Lonely Prince right there. Next up, we've got Mad Mim, and Mad Mim is very similar to Minotaur and Black Cat in that it can be a role filler in certain comps where you actually want it. And for that reason, I think that it probably has to sit alongside those three, maybe above Black Cat. There are going to be times where you just pick up a Mad Mim because you're so close to getting that Brave Princess to slay. You've already gotten 1 or 2 hits off of it, and you just need a little bit more oomph because maybe you got unlucky in one of your earlier combats. Another tip though, you might just want to put Brave Princess in the back line. It's probably more likely to slay back there, potentially put like a stag in front of it or something. But Mad Mim can work in these scenarios to also help Vampire slay, and then it's just like an evil unit that can play somewhat nicely on the board, though generally, yeah, I'd be picking up like any 3-cost unit above it, but it's one of the best 2-cost units in the game. Nothing super surprising to say there. We're going to look at Ogre Princess next, which is really good for a good unit, but I think ultimately it falls short, and we're going to put a few other good units in front of the Ogre Princess. It seems kind of interesting because you can get some nice econ on it. The problem is it's just not that big, and that means that it's not that good for your board, and if you're like picking up later, or even if you pick it up earlier, like you can pick this up turn 1 or turn 2 rather, and then if your opponent just has like a goat that attacks into it, or a baby dragon that attacks into it, even a Cindy that attacks into it, you haven't gotten any value and you've wasted 3 gold. So I'm definitely going to want to pick up any evil unit ahead of this, but it's definitely worth considering as far as some of the good units go, and yeah, definitely worth a consideration there. My next unit, I think, is going to be a little bit of a controversial pick, because I do know that some other players and streamers like Polywoggle on Peter Pants. I don't want anything to do with it. When I'm playing Peter Pants, I'm just trying to get my hat ball on, and if Polywoggle slays, you get a 4-cost unit. There's just nothing you can do with that unless you get like Nutcracker, or you're able to True Love's Kiss it and get Lancelot or Hercules. There's just very, very little that you can actually do with a Polywoggle, and I'm very much not excited to see it. It doesn't have any alignment either, so ultimately I think it's just really unexciting. Kind of a trap. You need to have like setup for it, and then you also need to find something to do with this random 4-cost minion. Obviously, some people are going to have success with it. The fact that you can get a tier 4 unit when the rest of the lobby is on level 2 can be pretty powerful, but I think the randomness of it and the fact that it isn't going to ultimately contribute to your game plan generally just makes me stay away, and I'd almost rather pick up any other unit on turn 1. I mean, maybe I'm purchasing it over Baby Root, but other than that, like anything past turn 1, I'm never purchasing a Polywoggle on Peter Pants. I mean, you can come up with some scenarios where you would, but it's really just not something that's going to interest me in general. Princess Peep, I think, is a fine unit if you want to play a bad version of Peter Pants. Basically, if you want to pick up these good units and try to play Peter Pants, you could make Princess Peep work. She would be strong alongside the Good Witch here, but that's not what I like to do. So I think that Princess Peep is kind of a trap. She is strong very early. If you pick her up turn 2, you're probably going to win the combat. But after that, she's not really even that strong. You'd have to pair her with like a Mad Mim, and isn't going to give you the most possible synergies on the board. And speaking of synergies, we are finally getting to her, the Queen of Hearts. And I think Queen of Hearts is the main reason that I keep stressing how important it is to play evil units while you are playing Peter Pants, because Queen of Hearts is just such a big payoff. It is really good if you're playing any hero, and if you're playing Peter Pants, it's really, really good to play Queen of Hearts, and it will allow you to win your combats, which gives you the flexibility to roll harder and really try to pursue those other treasures. So early game, sure, I'm taking any of these other things first, but after that, I'm taking Queen of Hearts pretty highly, and there are a few things that I will take over Queen of Hearts, and maybe she'll get knocked down to A, but I think I'm just going to slot some units in right here. But before we get to that, let's make our way through the rest of the alphabet. We are going to be looking at Rainbow Unicorn next, and Rainbow Unicorn definitely has some stats on it, but it's somehow even less exciting than all of this other stuff. I mean, you can take it turn 1 just to kind of like win the combat. Honestly, I'm probably going to purchase any of these other things over it because it cares about good units, and I don't care about good units while I'm playing Peter Pan, so Rainbow Unicorn, kind of just not what I care about at all. Romeo is fine. It's a 5-3. Because it's a 5-3, I might take it over Ogre Princess sometimes just because it's got the stats, and this is basically where you are looking Brave Princess to be at if it is a later turn in the game. But the fact that you can't find Juliet means that Romeo is kind of lost and not really that great. And yeah, pretty straightforward that Romeo is no bueno. Next, we'll take a look at Shadow Assassin. We'll throw that in the evil column. I should just like rename these like evil 3-cost, good 3-cost, evil 2-cost, etc. But Shadow Assassin is fine because it is an evil 3-cost unit. I think that it is generally one of the worse evil 3-cost units, but there are some times where you can really get off to a fantastic start with Vampire. I know I've been mentioning Vampire a lot, but if you get off to a good start with Vampire, you can make some nice Shadow Assassins out of it all as well. So that can be pretty good for you. Sherwood Sureshot can surely be pretty good. I think that it's probably better than Baby Dragon because sometimes you win a combat that you otherwise would have tied and you hit somebody for 4 damage. So I think putting Sherwood Sureshot here is fine. Maybe I will move Baby Dragon down to this tier. Yeah, because I'm looking, there's not too many other tier 2 units coming up. Maybe I will put Sherwood Sureshot down here even, and that'll start off the D tier. D tier units are all still fine. They're just not as good as like these premier 2-cost units. Next, we've got Sleeping Princess. I mean, I think there are occasional games where I will grab a Sleeping Princess and then hit it with a Luna's Grace or a Potion of Heroism. And then we've got an 8/8. And that's like a nice little way to just start off the game. So honorable mention to Sleeping Princess early on can be pretty strong. If you're not getting it early on, which, like, I mean, say you have 4 gold, you can either buy Sleeping Princess and Potion of Heroism it, or you can Romeo plus roll. Honestly, in that scenario, I'm probably going Sleeping Princess plus Potion of Heroism, or I'm just rolling and then purchasing whatever shows up in the next shop. But for that reason, I think that Sleeping Princess can be strong at this stage of the game. It's just not something that you really want to get too far into, trying to like triple it or do anything crazy like that. And you also don't want to pick it up like as a speculative thing if you don't have a spell in the shop that can immediately flip it, and then you're like rolling to the spell. Because like I said, the early game econ playing Peter Pants is just so important that I don't really want to be spending time casting spells at all. And speaking of that, we have Spellweaver, and it might shock you, but Spellweaver, which is how you win with Peter Pants, is actually a worse unit earlier on than Shadow Assassin is. I think that Spellweaver can still work, and I'm still going to pick it up over most of these other units if it's not like turn 2 or 3. In the first 4 turns of the game, there almost needs to be 2 separate tier lists, because Brave Princess is really good, Lucky's good, Prize Pig is good, and Spellweaver's kind of terrible during that time, because you really don't want to be casting any spells at all. Where Spellweaver gets good is when you already have some Wicked Witch supports, and you are really just trying to roll and find those tier 3 treasures. You might already have some Queen of Hearts, and you're already pretty strong. But in the very early game, I might take Romeo over Spellweaver, just because a 1/3 is going to have a difficult time keeping its place on the board. That said, Spellweaver is obviously insane in the end game comp. It is, at the end of the game, basically the only unit that you will be purchasing on Peter Pants. It's the only way to like get your board stronger other than purchasing more spells. But other than that, it's pretty weak. And I'd even say that it's much weaker than Shadow Assassin, because Shadow Assassin's actually going to be scaling, whereas Spellweaver is kind of a trap. So definitely pay attention to that. You don't want to go too heavy into the Spellweaver, but it can be good for you. And we are also going to take a look at what is the best good unit other than Brave Princess, and I'd probably put that somewhere along here, the Stag. Stag is really strong in the early game just because it provides so much stats. It costs 3 and it's 9/9 worth of stats if it gets to attack, and there is like a somewhat of a temptation to like support it with Good Witch or something like that. The one thing that I'll say here, and let's throw the Donkey in here too. Donkey is going to be probably a little bit better than Romeo, but not as good as Stag, and it probably gets somewhere in here. So one of the other points that I want to bring up about these good units is that if you pick up a Romeo or a Stag or a Donkey early on, you don't have to triple them even if you see a second copy of them in your shop. And the reason for that, again, is that Shard of the Ice Queen. And Shard of the Ice Queen is just going to mean that you are going to be able to turn them into an evil unit, and that's going to be something in this A tier, something that we haven't fully populated the list with yet, but that is potentially going to give you some value. And honestly, that is part of the reason that these good units are even in B tier. Picking up a Princess Peep on turn 2, say your options are Princess Peep, Black Cat, Mad Mim. You're going to take Princess Peep because it's a 3-cost unit. You can Shard of the Ice Queen it, and then you can grab a A-tier unit. And that is basically the main utility that these have. Honestly, I'm even thinking like maybe I should move Doubly down, because you're not going to be purchasing Doubly at any point in the early game, and when you need to pick up Doubly, you'll know, because you are, yeah, probably Doubly goes like, honestly, I'm not going to pick up Doubly over any of these units. If my shop is Doubly, and then Good Witch, I'm picking up Good Witch on turn 2. And I'm going to hope that I can Shard of the Ice Queen this Good Witch, but it's important to note that you cannot Shard of the Ice Queen Doubly. Ooh, that's a tricky one. Creeper, Doubly, Good Witch. I'd pick up Good Witch. I'd pick up a 2/3, just to have a little bit more stats and something that I can Shard. Now, there is always a chance that when you Shard something, it turns into a Haunted Creeper. It just happens sometimes, and that's the game that we play. But that's what makes Storybook Brawl fun. And yeah, I think I like this kind of configuration here now. See if I can balance it out a little bit more in a second. Next, I'm going to throw Tiny into here, and I think Tiny will go alongside Baby Dragon. It's just a strong unit. It doesn't have any type alignment, not that you really need type alignment on these tier 2 units, and it's just fine. If you need to pick up a unit and you already have Princess Wight, this can be a decent 7th dwarf when you are purchasing a bunch of doublies and crafties. And there is even some small scenarios where you will cycle some tinies, some fannies, some crafties just to get a little bit closer onto Princess Wight. But that is generally not really what you want to do. Again, I talked about some dwarves earlier on in the video. This video is also getting a little bit long, so I'm not sure if I will have thrown another game over in the corner. Maybe I will, I'm not sure. Haven't quite decided on that one. Probably, if you're still sticking with it on this point, you're just enjoying the tier list. But how about that game, huh? That was a sweet one. So now we are up to Vampire. And you might have noticed I've said Vampire a lot during this video. And it's actually because I really like Vampire. And if we were to break it down, on turn 2, if I have the choice between Vampire, Lucky, Prized Pig, Brave Princess. Okay, I'm probably buying Brave Princess, then Lucky, then Prized Pig. But Vampire's right after that. Vampire's really close, and there's 2 important things here to consider. I don't think the Brave Princess is as important, or I don't think Vampire is as important as Queen of Hearts. But the important thing to note here is that Vampire does scale, and the more that you scale early on, the easier it's going to be to scale later. So if I'm given the choice between Vampire and Queen of Hearts in the opening shop, well, obviously that one's pretty easy. I'm going to pick Vampire because I don't have any other evil units to go along with the Queen of Hearts yet. But that plays out through the rest of the game. I might lock Queen of Hearts for a few turns where I just pick up Vampire so that way I can scale and try to overwhelm the lobby. So that is definitely going to be a strong direction to consider. One of the best evil units, as far as I'm concerned, is the Wicked Witch support unit. This is a really good one. I'm not probably picking it over, like, well, Golden Chicken's kind of a silly one to be here. You just kind of pick it up when there's extra gold, but really, Golden Chicken is worse than all of these tier 3 units. And then sometimes these other tier 3 units might even be better than Blind Mouse. It's really all just going to depend on your econ more than which one's actually better. Just do whatever better for your econ this turn and then just lock the other one. That's totally fine. But Wicked Witch, this support, I think is really, really good in terms of putting all of this evil comps together. It does fight a little bit for space sometimes with these ranged units. You might even see that in the game that I showcased over there, but ultimately it's just going to be a pretty solid unit for your board. It is one of the reasons that like Black Cat plays pretty well, and it's also a reason that, and I believe in the game that I'm showcasing, I do pick up an early Princess White. Part of the reason I pick up the Princess White is because I believe I had a Wicked Witch support and a Queen of Hearts in the back line as well. So that's going to make Princess White better, and it's even going to make Creeper have some marginal value for a little bit, but it's just a 0-3, so it's not super exciting. A little bit better than that, though, I think, is Mummy. And Mummy is just really, really strong in being able to grab 2-for-1s. It is also really, really efficient when you put spells onto it, when you're like first starting to hatball in the early stages of the game, or maybe you find the hat before you find the ball. And if you do, Mummy is one of the best units to cast your spells onto, because you're going to get double use out of those spells, maybe even triple if it's an upgraded Mummy. It's also really good to cast spells on Vampire, because if you're able to slay with Vampire, Vampire is going to get stronger, so that +1/+1 could become a +2/+2 or more if it's upgraded, or if you have some Shadow Assassins. So Mummy and Vampire are definitely good units to cast spells on, especially like Wormroot or Witch's Brew. We do have a really interesting one up next, and that is Wizard's Familiar, and I think it's going to go down here with a lot of the other 1/1s. I really don't even like it better than Kitty Cutpurse in the opening game. Again, this Baby Root is not really like an early turn play. I'd probably put the Wizard's Familiar over... Honestly, it probably goes about here, and the main reason for that is the same kind of reason that you don't really want to be pursuing Spellweaver that early on. You need to focus all of your gold on making sure that you can find both the hat and the ball to really start to do some strong things. We'll just put Cindy up so that way it's a little bit more of a rounded distribution and looks a little bit nicer here. So there we go. That is my tier list. Let's download it here for the thumbnail, or maybe we want to keep that a secret. I'm not sure how to do tier list thumbnails, but that is going to be it for me for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you're still sticking around to this point, I'm sure you did, and hopefully this can help you if you're either a new player that hasn't played Peter Pants. I also definitely recommend watching any of the Peter Pants videos that aren't like sillier ones on my channel. Like, you don't need to watch one of the Embiggening Stones Peter Pants videos, but just watch one of the videos. Just search Peter Pants on my channel page, and I'll talk about a lot of these same points, and you'll get to see them in action as well. But I think we are pushing an hour for this one, so that is going to be it. Hopefully other tier list Tuesday videos will be shorter. A lot of tier lists, you have like a lot to say, and I think I gave a lot more value in going through the whole breakdown here than I would have if you just saw the image. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this content. Feel free to suggest other types of content that you'd like to see in the comments down below, and yeah, let me know. That is going to be it for me for this one, though, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.